Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it.
I am beyond excited about the opportunity today to share with you. Our guest is Ivan Sachs, who is an entrepreneur, an investor, a wealth manager, someone who has been a community builder, living in Dallas, Texas, building the Jewish community there, and has potentially one of the most harrowing stories you could imagine, having survived cancer 3 times. So I didn't talk a lot in this interview, probably to your benefit, but it was so amazing to hear how someone who is so focused on appreciation and Jewish values and bringing God into their life deals with challenges, deals with how God plays into business, plays into the work that he does, the returns that he has for his clients, for himself. And there's so much to say here. So with no further ado, I'm thrilled to have on Ivan Sachs.
Well, in 1995, when I was living in Dallas, Texas, and I knew I was going to reinvent myself for who knows what time, the umpteenth time, Ivan took this young pisher over here. He drove me around for a couple of days, and he took me to his investment company, and I met his boss, was a big mentor. Aron was at the forefront of the audio books. He had a store, took me that, gave me a bunch of information that I should listen to, and he really kind of took me under his palm of his hand, let's say, and it was really at a critical time of my life. Aron gave me straight talk and lots of chizuk, and it's really wonderful to see you today, Aron.
Good to see you as well. You know, it's interesting when you make an introduction and you mention things that I totally forgot about. It makes me remember that I probably lived a few lives. You know, like the audio books, which were on tape. To think that we don't have anything like tapes nowadays. That was a long time ago.
Ivan, can you just give us a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey? You mentioned audiobooks. How did you get started? How did you wind up in Texas with your beautiful non-Texan accent? Give us a little bit of the background, please.
Okay, so I came to the United States 40 years ago, pretty much, 1981. And I moved to Dallas, Texas, because the other West Coast and the East Coast looked too developed. And I just wanted to be in a place where I could grow up with the place. So Texas appealed to me at that time. And the Jewish community wasn't that advanced at that stage either. So it was just in the building stages, getting itself started. And so I was able to actually grow not only just with the city and getting to know people in the city, but also from a Jewish point of view, understanding that my background from Johannesburg, South Africa, was mostly in Kimberley, which is a real small little town, really, but it was a diamond city, and Johannesburg being the golden city. And I went to a very fine school by the name of Christian Brothers College, to boarding school at the age of 12. So at the age of 12, I got my Yiddishkeit by learning with a reverend, or a wonderful man, Reverend Matzner, learning my bar mitzvah on cassette tape. In terms of actual education, in terms of Judaism and that, I had my heart, my neshama has been connected to Yiddishkeit all the time. But in South Africa, we had a connection to Judaism. We just loved being Jewish, and we were mostly connected by 2 aspects. One being Israel, which was Zionism, and then we also had Holocaust. So those were the driving forces. I'm not necessarily saying in the Jewish schools, although, no, I'd say right throughout South Africa, those were the 2 primary things that were driving the country. Most of the schools we had were Orthodox in a way. All of them were Orthodox, but we lived ourselves. We drove to shul, we did all that kind of stuff. So we were conservadox, the actual attendees. The rabbis were the genuine article. And we were the articles trying to become genuine, but we didn't know what we were doing most of the time. It was a beautiful Jewish community. I would say that's probably one of the best in the world in terms of.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
You know, just warm and helpful beautiful. And no, there was absolutely, what I find amazing, there was no one looking down at someone that was religious or someone that was religious looking down at someone that wasn't. They just accepted people. It was really beautiful. There was no distinction between shuls because we never had anything but the Orthodox shuls. We didn't have conservative. And so all you'd have is you'd have different congregations all over. But so there was very little friction. Very
there was also
unified.
an overriding principle. It was a net contributor principle. Contribute when you consume, whether it's time, money, effort, right? That was a principle that we lived by, right?
Yeah. I mean, if a person was Jewish, you wanted to help them. You know, it was something that, I don't know, it was just like, you just respected it. If a person wore kippah, did something, oh, wow, okay. You didn't have a preconceived idea in any one way or the other about that particular person. You just accepted them in a very warm way. And I really am, it was a real treasure living in South Africa from a Jewish point of view. And again, understanding that I was very secular. I had no, I couldn't even read Hebrew. I learned it on a tape. And I've become very involved, having moved to the United States. I got involved with Rabbi Roden here in Dallas, who really started out from nothing. And I joined him and started the shul of here, and then also started off the yeshiva.
I'm gonna stop you there because that's a whole conversation. Talk more about the entrepreneurial, the business side, because your whole Judaism entrepreneurial, your social entrepreneurial is a phenomenal conversation in itself, you know?
Okay, sure. So when I came into the United States, I liked numbers and I liked people. So I decided, well, liking numbers, liking people, become a stockbroker. So I went and I knocked on 17 different doors, and no one gave me the job except the 17th guy, which was a guy, Don Hodges, who Mike remembers having met. And he hired me. Everyone else liked my accent. I don't think they really understood what I was saying. They like the accent, but they don't understand the words. And so he hired me, and I'm to this day very indebted to him. He was just a wonderful mentor. He's since passed away, and I started out with him in his firm. I had to wait 6 months before they could hire me because I didn't have a green card or anything. When I came here, I just came as a visitor, and then I got sponsored by a very wonderful family, the Shep's family, as an accountant. And from there, I became a stockbroker working at Rouse Pierce Refness. I was a very, very hungry individual in terms of eager to perform. They paid me a salary, I don't know, maybe $2,000 a month, and I was so excited. And the guys who were with me as well, the American guys that were with me, just couldn't understand that I was so appreciative, you know, for everything that I had, which goes to today's society, where everyone's got an expectation that they get everything for free. And I was so, so appreciative. I became the #1 producing broker in the company's 75-year history. And the one guy says to me when they interviewed me for why I did so well, so I said, I don't know, I'm just very excited, you know, I'm so appreciative to be here. So the one guy stands up and says, oh, no. So the Jews are the people that are supporting your business and all that kind of thing. That's why you guys do well. Truth of the matter is that I didn't have that many Jewish clients at the time, but you could just see when you do produce results, no matter where you are in the world, you are identified as being Jewish.
I feel like we could pull that out. I feel like we could pull that experience and just, you know, dump it in 2020 and no one would notice any difference. Yeah. That's such an amazing idea. And I want to reiterate, in case anyone was not clear, that you attribute your success to the fact that you were genuinely appreciative of where you were and of the opportunity. And I think that finding that for people is such a crucial thing. Like, do you like where you are? Are you happy where you are? And if the answer is yes, you will naturally produce. And if not, so then you could be in potentially the most, you know, environment that could be the most lucrative in the world. But if you hate it, it's not right for you.
100%.
That's also another thing, Rabbi. There's also another thing about South Africans. You know, I always joke that people are never neutral to a South African. They either love us or they hate us. But if there's one thing about South Africans, when we came to the rest of the world, we're thankful they gave us an opportunity, without a doubt. That's the Hakarat Tov. But in addition, we knew what we left behind. And there was no ways we were going to sit around and wait for someone else to potentially give us an opportunity to regain what we left behind. We came because we didn't want to take a down standard in lifestyle and in community, and that we came because we wanted to at least get back what we left behind and improve on it. Isn't that true, Av? Like we came with expectations, we had to push for it.
Yeah, we were driven.
Hungry.
We were hungry, but I think the idea goes to today's world. I was so appreciative, literally. So I told you in a short thing that I had to wait 6 months before I got hired. So if I had to wait for 6 months, what did I do? And I literally I worked for a telephone company. I think I sold some telephone. And then I just cut people's lawns. And I was happy as anything, cutting people's lawns. I mean, one guy had a lawn that I still remember to this day, was so high, got $25 or something like it. If it was that, I don't know, maybe it was even less. But I was just so happy. Just being here and very appreciative for the opportunity, getting your, I can't begin to tell you. I mean, the people that sponsored me, I still thank them to this day. I remember writing an extensively long letter of thanks, which is one of the best exercises I've ever done, is to take 3 people or 4 people in your life that have done something of value to you and really put pen to paper and express the deep level of appreciation that you have for their kindness and helpfulness during the time. And not only was it extremely valuable to me for having written it out, because sometimes you forget, but to the person receiving it, they really treasured it. And I still remember the people that I wrote those letters to. I remember someone had suggested it and I just decided to do it.
There was also something else that I remember about you from the days when we lived in Dallas, is something that I really believe is something that I'm proud to say is one of my quests, is you always cherished older people. Being around wisdom, being around people 20, 30 years older than you, and then you'd invite them around to your house and you'd give them a whiskey or whatever it was and say, impart wisdom. And I remember you had one guy, you said to me, this gentleman in front of me, he's been a gazillionaire, he's lost a gazillion, he's been a gazillionaire. And so I looked at him and I said, well, what are you right now? He says, on the upswing. And I said, can you share some wisdom for Ivan and I? He says, what's wrong with you guys? You all ask me the same question. And I remember what he said to me, this is a long time, 25 years ago. He said, a piece of garbage is a piece of garbage. You can never pour perfume on a piece of garbage because it'll still stink. Cut your losses, my friend.
I remember that. Was just as a matter of interest, not in terms of the actual person, but was that the guy that was from Galveston, Texas?
That's the guy.
Yeah. This guy was a wild character, like Zorba the Greek, just full of life. And I remember that exact story. Okay, good. Yeah. That's a good memory.
And if only I would have remembered that lesson. Well, I always remembered if only I would have acted on that lesson. Because we all have a habit of trying to pour perfume on smelling garbage, right?
Yeah, I think the way I remember it, Mike, was just the idea that he says you can't, I don't want to be crude, but he just said, I think at the time, because he's just that kind of guy, he just said you can't polish a turd. In other words, what you were saying is that, like, unless you've had hard life experience, you really can't really give over experience and wisdom. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's very much it. Yeah. So talk about, other than your stockbroking, because I know stockbroking was part of it, but you always had other things going. You always.
Yeah. So it's an interesting journey. If you really want to know a person, the last place that you want to look for knowing a person is to look at a person's resume. A resume is just generally polished up just to show how good you are or why you believe people should like you and everything else like that. And really, if I were to write an honest resume, I would say that I've, like you said earlier on, Mike, done many, many things. I mean, I have passed, I remember until the age of 42, I'm now 63, I was moving from one job to another job to another job. Now, every time that I did a job, I did well in it. And then I decided, no, that's not it. And I moved on. And one of the most invaluable lessons one can have is to have a look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, what's going on? When you have to reboot yourself every single time to start off another business, start of a career. And believe you me, I'm a pretty decent salesperson, so I could rationalize as to why I was moving from one thing to the other. And so I would do that. But then I'm a little bit of a slow learner. You remember, I was educated at Christian Brothers College in Kimberley. It took me until the age of 42. And I said to myself, what's going on here? I'm rebooting myself. I've got to find out what's going on with Ivan Sachs. And so I called my brother-in-law in Austin, and I said, tell me something. Do you have someone that's a psychiatrist? I really want to get to the bottom of why things are circulating. I'm sharing this information because I believe it's more valuable than most, only because a lot of people just don't know how to identify and to recognize the things that are holding them back or whatever. So I went and I met with a psychiatrist for the first time. By the way, psychiatry, psychologists, and all that kind of stuff in South Africa, it's pasnik. You don't ever talk about that kind of stuff. You know, you're strong, you're tough, you don't cry, and everything else like that. Psychiatrists, psychologists, you have to be a nut. So when I say it now, you know that I've actually graduated a little bit further than when I came. So I didn't know, I've gone to a psychiatrist, I don't know whatever. So he gave me a battery of tests. But I can tell you now what's amazing is that I learned so much. I would classify this individual as one of my closest friends ever, the psychiatrist. I mean, a friend like this, he calls me every single week. How are you doing, whatever? And it just so happens, as life works out, his last name is certainly not Jewish at all. And I paint rocks, and I know painting rocks is something that people won't understand what I mean by painting rocks. But if you hold on 1 second, I've got, like, let's say I paint rocks like that, you know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So I would paint rocks. And so when I painted rocks, I would give them out to people. By the way, this has been one of the more interesting journeys of my life, painting rocks. But I would paint rocks every single day. I don't know, for 4 years or something like that. I started doing that when I had my cancer. But besides that, the rocks are an amazing, amazing way of communicating. People that I've given rocks to still have their rocks displayed in their houses or whatever. And it's always just a positive message. Why I bring it up, though, is that he said, you know, my mother is not well. And I said, I'll make a rock for her. I said, that could be so nice. He said, I don't know why. She's just very connected to Judaism in some way. I said, oh, okay, fine. So I said, oh, okay, Hashem loves you, or whatever. Yeah, I put that on a rock. And I found out later that she was, what would you call it, a cryptic Jew, or crypto Jew, or some people say it's derogatory to say a Marano or whatever. But they came from Spain, and he himself is fully Jewish.
Wow, so they kept the lineage down the mothers, eh?
Huh?
All the women in his life have been Jewish consistently. Wow.
But I mean, his father was Catholic. You know, his father is totally Catholic. The name is absolutely a Hispanic name, you know, like Gonzalez or something like that. But the most wonderful human being like you could ever believe. And I share a lot of Judaism with him.
I wanted to just to interrupt for 1 second. That's something that stuck out for me that was so phenomenal and fascinating, mostly because I'm in the coaching space, the rabbi space, and there's a lot of these clinical kind of crossovers. And what's so beautiful is you look at this experience as something that was so transformative from your life, but behind all of the technical information that I'm sure he was able to share with you, the person kind of shone through. And I think behind every great technician, if you don't have that personal relationship, you're leaving so much of it kind of on the table. And that's just such a fascinating piece, just that you mentioned about how impactful that relationship was.
Yeah, no, it's been a wonderful, but the interesting thing is to have recognized and identified a problem that you don't see as a problem. I'm just moving on to the next thing. That's all. I'm just moving on to the next thing. And I rationalized, oh, well, you know, it was a nice experience, but I'm moving on. And then I found out, let's say the diagnosis, let's say what people mostly say to these days, you've got ADD, whatever the case is. And as I said, I was generally very successful at every place that I went. But why are you moving the whole time? And if you can stop, and so many people go through this, I've met so many people that I've tried to help along the way, just to understand, hey, wait, why are you doing this? I did that as well. It's been a tremendous benefit for myself, obviously, and for others as well.
I want to suggest something, because let's suffice it to say that Ivan is a very good investment manager. He is. He's also a great entrepreneur on a startup basis because he gets passionate about things, because it's going to be hard to push him in that direction to tell us more. It's too humble in that respect. So let's talk about his motivation from a community basis. He was very modest when he said that Dallas had not much of a Jewish community, pretty much had nothing. It was almost nothing, at least in the modern Orthodox area. I haven't met Rabbi Roden. Now let's talk about, and yeah, you can't be as modest. What have you done to build Dallas, and why?
Well, I think that driving to be Jewish, I'm so proud of it. And the army in South Africa helped me to be, going to boarding school at Christian Brothers College made me recognize that I was Jewish, because everyone reminded me, the bullies and all that, when I first arrived at the age of 12. And then when we were in the army, literally we took on they put all the Jews into one camp in Heidelberg. And they there was quite a bit of anti-Semitism, and we literally called the whole camp together, and we said, we are prepared to take you all on. I remember still, there was a guy, Anthony Levine, and there was something just incredibly, I love being Jewish. I can't even begin to tell you how Judaism has helped me throughout all the journeys and difficulties that I've been through. And then when I got here, I just wanted to get involved. So I helped start the shul, Congregation Ohev Shalom. I was the president there for, I think, 20 years or something, on and off. I'm a master delegator. I love to delegate. So it's really not a great accomplishment that I was a president for 20 years. I just gave away the work for 20 years.
But let me just give some context. That shul was the catalyst for building Dallas, which Aron's going to eventually talk about as we drag it out from him. He'll talk about Dallas is today. But I remember you going to Tom Thumb, which was the supermarket, and convincing the manager to open up a kosher deli in the kosher section. Yeah. It was the most phenomenal thing. You actually pulled it off.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that. There is so much in your life, Mark, I'm sure, and in yours as well, Rabbi, that it's so good to reflect back with people that you haven't spoken to in years, because you forget what you've done. I don't even remember that. But anyway, I may have done it or may not have done. But if I had to do it, I would have done it if that was my job. But getting the shul started off in Dallas was, you must understand that everyone came from different backgrounds. Rabbi Roden is just the most beautiful human being I know. And the longer I get to know him, the more I respect him. He's not, he's not one of these charming, he's a very pleasant and beautiful human being, but he's not like an eloquent speaker, although I think he speaks well. He's not like charismatic, that kind of thing, but quiet, humble. And I just loved him from day one when I met him, and whatever he wanted, I was prepared to do. So that's why I started off with the shul and got very, very involved with that. And then the shul itself, the one thing that the Chofetz Chaim, Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim, had never really accomplished getting a shul to start off a yeshiva. And Rabbi Roden really wanted that. And we had two rabbis coming to town, Rabbi Kaufman and Rabbi Pach. They came in, they just graduated, they were looking at other places, and they decided to do a yeshiva, start a yeshiva, which was the first in the southwest of the United States at the time. And I just got so excited about that. So the actual yeshiva itself, which is now 15 years old, started off in Congregation Ohev Shalom, originally with like 4 to 5 guys. Now we have about 55. We have a regular, and then we have a base medrash program as well. And that to me has been my biggest joy. And I don't know whether I meant to mention all of this on a podcast. Maybe I didn't know that I was going to speak about psychiatry or my issues. And then I also was about to get divorced. So talking about divorce is probably a very good thing to talk about, but what I mean by My wife could not understand why I was always at the shul and at the yeshiva, always. So she said, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave you. So the one rabbi is very funny. I don't know if you ever met Rabbi Ringelheim. It's like, so what's the grounds for divorce? He is too much involved with the yeshiva and everything. Yes, that's exactly right. We never ever got divorced, but it's always been a contentious point. Like even my daughters have always said to me, Dad, you were always more with the yeshiva boys than you were with us. But I think we all benefited tremendously from having the shul and having the yeshiva very close by.
Could I ask, I wanted to ask a little bit more about that, because one of the things that becomes so difficult for so many people is that sense of pull, which is you're working very hard and at the same time also, showing up in shul and then really getting something out of it and creating relationships with the guys in the yeshiva, the guys in the kollel. How did you manage it? It sounds like it wasn't without a certain toll on your family. So what are some pieces of advice that you could offer potentially about how a person could approach that balance?
I probably wouldn't change it. I'd probably do more than what I did. No, by that I mean, the interesting thing is no matter how much, let's say, my daughters complained and everything else like that, they were complaining through a window of seeing what was important and what really is important. Because really, when you think about it today, even though I've got older, I realize that I should be more involved, studying and being involved with the shul and all that. I don't think you can be too much involved because there is a time in your life where you'll become less involved for whatever reason. You might, like I had cancer for 10 years. So for quite a while, although while I had the cancer for the 10 years, I think I became stronger from a Jewish point of view. I used the shul and the yeshiva as a major springboard. By the way, I love my cancer experiences. But I know it sounds strange. It's probably going to be one of your odd podcasts. I really did. When I got cancer the first time, it was an extreme shock. I never expected it at all. And then got it the second time. The doctor, I said, how difficult is it the second time? He says, no, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's not going to be easy walk in the park. And then when I got it for the third time, he says, well, if you thought that was bad, this is like a lot more worse. And I must say, I had a great time. Why? Because in my room at the hospital, I literally had a base medrash table with two boys studying the whole time. Or I had guests coming the whole time, and then I would have competitions who would give me the best present or not, and then I would post it. This person gave me the best present today. I'm really looking for oranges. Anyone want to give me oranges or whatever? And literally made it into a game. Because most people, when you have cancer, people don't know how to relate to you. Hi, how are you? Or you're not feeling so well. No, I'm feeling fantastic. There's a little journey, that I'm going on, but I really made it into a game. And by making it into a game, the people themselves enjoyed it. And I just found that during that time, I recognized obviously that Hashem had given me these tests for a reason. And the one, just very briefly, I don't want to just shift me back on course if you want me to go in any direction. First time I had the cancer, I was like in 2006, I had pain in my back and I couldn't figure it out. I went to a wonderful chiropractor. He said, don't worry, within 12 weeks sessions, you'll be fine. Pain never went away, nothing. Went for another one, and then eventually they took an MRI and they found out that I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that was tremendous pain and then a great shock to know that I had cancer. I remember it's the first time I ever felt faint, just getting the news that I had cancer. Everybody else could have cancer, but me, no. It wasn't, I was physically fit. I wasn't interested in being sick at the time, but Hashem knew better. So I had chemo, and then after, I was clear for 5 years. And then when I got my clearance, I was very excited I could go and get life insurance again or whatever. And then like 2 days after, he gave me that past test that I'm clear. I got another lump on my neck, and guess what? I had lymphoma again. And that was chemo, high dose chemo, and then I had to use my own stem cells. So that kill off all your stem cells, your body, and then you would take out the new ones that you just produced and then put them into yourself. That's called autologous, where you put your own cells back into yourself. So they kill off everything in your system, put that back in, and see what happens. As it happened, maybe one little cell or whatever got infected or whatever, and the next thing I had it back in 2.5 years. Mathematically, they can't explain it, but it's meant to come back in half the time. So when it was 5, came back in 2.5 years. And then I got it again, like in 1.25 years later. So the third time, the doctor was very concerned. Each time it was a death sentence. He said, look, Ivan, I don't know if you're going to make it. There's only one chance that you can have, and that is to do again. The second time was the worst that I ever had, going through the high dose chemo. And then he said, no, this is, if you thought the other one was hard, this is going to be much harder. Because if you're taking your own cells from yourself, there's no rejection. You're not going to reject your own body. So it's an easy thing to be able to take your cells into your own body. Now I had to go into an allogenic, not autologous, but an allogenic transplant, where I had to find somebody else to get cells. It's another reason why, you know, you should you should only marry Jewish people. Jews should only marry Jews, not only because it's the right thing to do or a good thing to do, but when you're going for stem cells, you're going to find someone that's going to match you better. Well, you might get it another way, but you're going to get a much better match if you find someone.
And in fact, wasn't Shweki's concert part of the story? Because Shweki, the famous singer, heard Ivan's story, and he did a concert for you. Can you just touch on that for a second?
Yeah. So what happened is, on the third go round, I'll come to that. The doctor says, yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, you know. And I really don't want to promise you anything, you know, life or anything else like that, but it's going to be very difficult. I say, okay, let's go for it, doctor. So we look all over the world, and it's interesting. You learn about so many things. If a person's over the age of 40, they don't qualify to give you your stem cells. They need to be younger. Secondly, anyone that's been in the army or whatever, even if they were on the donor registry list, they're not allowed to give. And so they couldn't find anyone for me for a while. And then my daughter was in, again, the Jewish connection, was in New York, and she meets this rabbi, and the rabbi says, yeah, no, there's an organization called Gift of Life. And I've got a friend of mine who knows them. And sure enough, Gift of Life, a wonderful man by the name of, he'll come back to me in a second. He calls me and he says, Ivan, don't worry, we'll find you this person. It'll be no charge, nothing at all. The Jewish aspect, being Jewish, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, there's another. So anyway, sure enough, 3 days later, he comes up with 3 people. So we had to choose. So that we chose, well, the doctor really chose a girl, single, hadn't had any pregnancies or anything else like that, and she's 26 from New York City. Fine, I don't mind. And the next thing is, my sister actually was a perfect match. From South Africa, we flew her, and just a few days while we were having the Shweki concert. So while I was going through this thing, a couple of young rabbis from an organization called JET decided they were going to get Yaakov Shweki to come through to Dallas to have a party, you know, basically to celebrate or whatever. It's actually on my website. It was the most fantastic party. If I asked Rabbi Roden, what was the most magical night you've ever had in your life, he says that. And as I said, it's on the front page of my website. You'll just see, it was just remarkable. It was put together like in a matter of 24 hours or 36 hours. And we had like over 250 people in the backyard. A lot more people would have come, but we didn't really advertise it. But it was just the most wonderful connection of Jews of all backgrounds. Now we're talking about having been in the Kiruv world, which I have, where I've always tried to get people involved and come to study Torah and all that kind of stuff. After a while, you get pretty unpopular, you know, asking people to come and study, and then if they don't want to, sort of thing, they fall off the tree. And you have like you take the lowest hanging fruit wherever you can find it, and then later on it becomes a little bit more difficult. But at this night, everyone came. I mean, it was just a remarkable evening of celebration and unity. It was a very, very special night with Yaakov Shweki being there. It was just a wonderful evening. I thank him and the rabbis. It was just an amazing evening.
I want to ask
so
you.
Anyway, my sister falls through the cracks. So my sister fell through the cracks, and she was very disappointed that she couldn't be that donor. But And I literally had a few days left to find, and the insurance company said you can only look at 3 people a day, which is very difficult if you've got a data bank of so far. But this guy, Jay Feinberg, from Gift of Life, a wonderful human being, he found this person. So as a Yad Hashem, the hand of Hashem, you can just see how he comes into action. So this girl is 26 from New York City, and she knows only that I'm 57 and I'm from Dallas, Texas. That's it. We're not allowed to know anyone. Now, the doctor knows that I'm mischievous in a way that I always like to find out things. So he warns me, my Indian doctor, I even know you cannot go and find, no, it's illegal and it's a federal offense if you find out who your donor is. You're not allowed to do it for reasons of extortion and everything else like that. If you need more, they could say, okay, well, but anyway, all I know is that in my blog, I had a blog that I used to write, and I put in there, so I called up the actual center, and I said, how good a match is this? They said, no, very good. I said, no, on a scale from 1 to 10, no, sorry, so we can't tell you. For whatever reason, they didn't want to tell me anything about it. Okay, fine. What is it like? Is it like winning the jackpot? Yeah, it's like winning the jackpot. So I changed her name because I wanted to give her a name. I don't say donor. I mean, who cares about a donor? So I called her Jackie for jackpot. So I called her Jackie, and then my daughter flew in to be with me for when the stem cell. By the way, very, very anticlimactic experience. It's just a bag of blood. And it's hanging over and a small little bag. And they put it into you, and that changes your whole life. You have a new birth date and everything else like that. You literally have got a new life. And I get a call from a friend, or text from a friend. I think I know who this girl is. I said, oh, that's wonderful. So who could it be? She says, no, I think it could be this girl, not Jackie, it's Greer. I said, okay. So what's her last name? Brody. Okay, fine. So I said, Liat, look up her name on Facebook. See if you can see it, Greer Brody. Sure enough, she's originally from Dallas, Texas. Less than 1.5 miles from our house. Wow. That she lived. She's been living in New York. The doctor from Cornell said that the similarity between the blood type and mine, the actual components that were there, was like as close as anything. Your grandparents must have been related. That's how good the match was. So guys, that's fine. I put it in and I said, Leah, do me a favor. You've got to call this girl. Dad, are you crazy? You can't call this girl. You're going to go to jail. It's a federal offense. I said, let me tell you something. I live YOLO. You only live once. If I'm going to say thank you to her, I might die. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I want to say thank you to her. I'm not waiting 2 years to go and tell the girl. If I know the girl, I'm calling her. So I got her on the phone. And I failed to tell you that there were 2 things that I could know if she was the person or not. Jay Feinberg had emailed me the day before at 10 a.m. in the morning. So it would have been 11 a.m. in New York time to say, Ivan, I'm just watching the girl give her blood. Please, God, you'll have it tomorrow. That's one. Second thing is that she was rejected as being a possible candidate for me because she had gone to Mexico and had not taken malaria tablets. So I said to the doctor, that's my kind of girl. There's no ways I go to Mexico and I take malaria tablets. So I signed the waiver, and that she was able to give. So I knew 2 things about her. I knew the time she gave the blood, and secondly, I knew that she'd gone to Mexico and didn't take malaria tablets. So when I'm on the phone, I said, hey, Greer, how are you? I said, you gave blood? Yeah. Tell me something. Did you go to Mexico and didn't take malaria tablets? That's not very nice. She said, no, I didn't. I said, good. Okay, so you are my lady, I think. And what time did you give your blood? And sure enough, it was the time. So I knew who she was. And it was just a few days before Thanksgiving. And she came back to see her dad in Dallas. And so I met her a few days after I had the stem cell. So it really was an amazing experience. And thank God, I had a try. They just said within 2 years, you'll know whether you're going to live or not. And thankfully, it was in 2014. Now we are 2020. So it's been a good, thank God, a good 6 years.
So, because we only have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, please, take me away.
No, this is where I want to get focused now. So you're a guy, you built schools, you built schools. When you see a cause that's meaningful for you, you use your platform to make sure that cause is successful. You bring it resources, you bring it wisdom. Give, 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 give. And yet you're the one who speaks the most often about thank you, thank you, thank you. So here's a question for you. I hope it's okay, but not only has Ivan suffered from illness in his family, but he's got children or a child that has suffered tremendously as well. So you're carrying, being an entrepreneur, and we all know there's ups and downs and burdens that come with that. That's for sure. You got sickness, you got child sickness, you got all kinds of volatility. Why didn't you ever wake up in the morning one day and say, you know what, I've given, 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 and it's absolutely fine for me to sit back and receive, receive, receive. What was it that didn't allow you to say, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I've done more than my bit, so now I'm going to step back and let others do for me. What is it? What is that?
First of all, I don't think I've done anything really. Relatively speaking, I'm just talking for myself personally. I don't feel like I've done that much. And I'm not saying that just to say it. So I've got a lot more to do. So I don't have that as my thing, that I've done so much. I would love to have done much more and still would love to do much more. But I think the way I view life is everything that you go through is an incredible learning and fantastic experience. So you talk about, I've got a son with special needs. He's now 23, amazing young man, but totally he's at home with us the whole time. Then my daughter, who was the one with me at that time at the hospital, she landed up, I think it was almost like, she's close to me. She said, I've got the same things that you've got. And she landed up having lupus. Then it became a little bit worse and she got Raynaud's. Lupus is an autoimmune disease. Raynaud's is when you have your swelling of the fingers and all that kind of tightens up, your skin tightens up, and you have very little fluid going through to your blood vessels. And then the third thing, she had to have her gallbladder taken out. The doctor said she needed to have a gallbladder taken out. Now, when you've got lupus and when you have Raynaud's, you have to have warm fluids. You have to be in a warm environment. Now, a surgery room is not warm at all. They failed to give her warm fluids, and they failed to give her a bear hug sort of thing in the hospital. So she comes out of that surgery, which is normally generally not much to get, with her hands itchy like crazy. You cannot believe how itchy it was. She couldn't get any peace. Next thing is, within a matter of days, her fingers became gangrene. She got gangrene on her fingers. The pain that she went through and why I was with her was much greater than I ever had in the 10 years that I had with my cancer. Not even, I had no pain relative to what she went through. That was extremely, extremely difficult. Dad, I want to take my life. I said, I think it's one of the best ideas you told me. It's a good idea to take your life, but let's discuss that tomorrow. Because to argue with a person when they say they want to have something, you don't want to argue. You don't need to argue. You're not going to win the battle. So I said, let's talk tomorrow. And obviously, she's come out to be the most incredible, successful person. I mean, her life has been difficult. She's got a thing called scleroderma. And you don't want to look it up, what scleroderma is. It's a very difficult disease. You never get over it. And you have episodes all along the way. She's an entrepreneur second to none. She's number one in the country for BCBA, which is the people that behavior, cognitive, whatever. It's a very difficult test to pass. And she couldn't teach because her immune system was so low. When she loves being around special needs kids because of my son. Then she decided to, like you said, Mike, to reinvent herself. And she decided, you know what, I'm going to teach people on how to pass the exam. And so she's got a thing called Study Notes ABA. It's a very difficult exam to pass. All the people that take it through her, it's a very fun thing that pass it. And she's got the most incredible business thing. She's got a podcast, which I don't want to mention the name. It's called Behavior, B. B is for, like a dog. What do you call it? A male dog. And then you have a bitch dog, which is a female dog. But she's got a podcast that I think she's got like 500,000 followers or something. Wow. And just like, it's just like, I can't even begin to tell you how successful she has been. And I'm just very proud of her. But the thing that I like mostly about my kids, of course, there's many things, but I'm most proud of, and I think every parent would be, is that they give tzedakah. So both my one daughter works for, heads up marketing for Weight Watchers in New York, and moving from New York, I think. And then my other one lives here in Dallas doing what she does. But they have got like their MISA, they have their set aside accounts. And then like my daughter in New York would always say, Dad, I've accumulated $10,000. Where do you think I should give this money? And for me, if you ask me what's one of my greatest accomplishments, or not so much accomplishments as much as like greatest nachas that a parent could have, is that you know that your children, and they're always saying, okay, well, who in the family needs money, or whatever the case is. And I'm just so proud of that as a function. And I think Rabbi Roden, I remember when, whenever you get called up to the bimah for an aliyah sort of thing, and you're involved with the shul, yasher koach, if a person gives sort of thing, and then some people just say, what do they say, matana, whatever. No one's specific about anything like that. I'm not saying no one, as some people aren't specific about it. So I said to Rabbi Aron, just as a matter of interest, when you give tzedakah, I know you should be humble, you shouldn't give whatever. He says, no, it's a good idea that you should mention the amount of money that you want to give, and you're not doing it for everybody else. You're doing it for your children. You're doing it for your family. And I think they learned from that. So it was a wise piece of advice, which I didn't really get. But he says, when you give, and it motivates other people to give as well. And I know my wife would say, just keep a lower key. You don't want to be higher key. But I think that was a big piece of advice. So I think the end result being that I'm so proud that my kids have learned to give as well at an early stage of their lives.
I'll tell you a quick story on whether you should give or not, because I always had that dilemma as well. I have a good friend of mine in Toronto from a very, very prominent family, especially in the earlier years, but they went very secular. And one day he was with his father, being showing around Israel, all the hospitals, etc., that they had endowed. And they were driving past Mea Shearim, and he noticed the name on a little building in Shiva, and it bore the name of his grandfather. Just his father, whoa, stop. He's like 21 years old. Stop. Like, what's that about? Your grandfather was into that kind of stuff, We don't really believe in that. He says, stop, I want to go in and introduce myself. Met the Rosh Yeshiva. Fast forward, he's now older than me. Pretty much built Esh Toronto. Supporter of many, many causes. Learns all the time. Only because his grandfather put his name on a building. If not, who knows what this friend of mine, Richard, would be today.
Yeah. It's a very fine line to know that, like, are you making the Trump Towers because you want your name to be there, or are you doing it because you're doing it for Hashem? You're doing it
to inspire and empower.
Yeah.
Because we only have about a few minutes left, I want to ask you a question. What your journey and the mountains you've had to climb, and every little stone and stumble along those mountains, do you ever get to phases where you look up at Hashem and say, okay, I got it. I thank you for all you've given me, but now it's enough. You leave me alone for a while? Or like, why did you do this to me? What happens in those moments if you have them?
So I hate to be like, I've never enjoyed really being around people that are like the Brady Bunch. Everything's just so sweet and everything's so great and everything else. Life is not that great and not that sweet all the time. And particularly, as I said, in the investment business, it can be up and down and everything else. You have challenges, you're humbled in so many ways. The one thing that the only thing that I would really drive home the point, and I want to come back to answering your question, is I've really come to one conclusion, one mantra that I keep in my mind every single day. I've got it in my talis bag, I've got it everywhere. Ein od milvado. There is no one but Hashem. Every result that I've achieved, and I've had to learn this the hard way, and I think that's why I've had difficulty, let's say, over the last 3 years with my investment business. I just want to be more transparent. I don't want to pretend that I'm everything else. Very, very difficult time. Disappointment in, let's say, the management team in which I had a great deal of trust in. Secondly, the fact that my results, I did very well for 14 years, and then just suddenly the last 3 years, terrible. And I realized, the thing that one has to realize when you've got this Ein od milvado, that there's no one but Hashem. No one can help you, no one can hurt you. everything's from Hashem, is that when I have the cancer, I'm meant to have it. I'm not a victim. Similarly, I pray every single day that I'll be a good shaliach for my clients. But I haven't been a good shaliach for the last 3 years. What are you talking about? The results that I've got for my clients is exactly what I'm meant to have. The pain that I have to experience, feeling the pain of other people's pain, is very, very difficult. And it's not what I want. I want things to go. Going to your question, I was in Chicago giving one of our talks. We go around giving talks on how to deal with crisis. One woman stands up and she says, don't you think, like, the fact that God's giving you all this, don't you say, why me? And Rabbi Aron answered the question beautifully. And I think it really says, he says, like, let's say you were to win the lottery. Would you ask the same question? Why me? You know? And it was just like a subtle thing. And you just realize everything comes there. And when things are difficult, they're meant to be there. And I think I've grown more from that. Except that I think, Mike and Rabbi, if you don't talk about these painful situations that you're going through and express, like, wow, you know, some people had a value in their portfolio of let's say, $200,000, and that was the high mark, and now it's down to $90,000 or something like that. Like, if you don't talk about it, you've got to express it. You know, there are times, there's changes and everything else like that. But I think most people bear it inside themselves. You know, you get very upset about it and you can't grow because you haven't been able to tell your story. And I really am very appreciative for you guys to ask me on to your wonderful podcast. I just hope that some of the words that I've given could be helpful to others. And I just wish you great success in educating Jewish people through your podcast.
This was completely awe-inspiring. It was so beautiful to hear, not just the ups and downs, and just what you've gone through is truly unspeakable, and your perspective is so crucial. The idea of being able to take responsibility, the idea for, you know, using this as a platform to speak about all of the, it's just, you know, there could be nothing more comforting and inspiring as we go through the times that we're in right now, to hear something like that, because you've stared down so many tremendous challenges, and I would give anything to have this perspective of yours. And I know that it's for all of us to take, but it's like, it's so inspiring is such a trite word. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate so much you coming on. Obviously, the idea that you made such an impression on Mike, and I hope that you get some nachas looking at the role that he takes and the community positions that he's, you know, in now. It's such an honor to be a small part of this, just for this moment of your journey, and I profoundly appreciate it.
With pleasure.
And there's a
really,
hatzlacha bracha. But there's a gamze over, and you know what it is. Even this will come round. Ivan took me into his store of audiobooks, and it was a time where I was just completely lost. You know, I'm like I've reinvented myself a lot of times. It's what I do. I get nothing out of that. I'm
like still reinventing myself, so I don't want to act like I'm out of this and I had things figured out. So I just put that out for clarity.
But here's the crazy thing. Ivan gave me a bunch of audiobooks by authors. I still remember them today. In those days, Tony Robbins was hardly even known. I want to know when Ivan's going to write his book for general consumption, because in retrospect, you're greater, in my opinion, than any of the men whose books you gave me.
That's very nice. You know, it's interesting. I've had people say to me, you're going to write a book, you're going to write a book. And I came to the conclusion, I don't want to write a book. And I'll tell you why. There are so many people that have got wonderful stories of books that they've written. And it's just like another book upon another book. But I'll tell you which book I would write, probably, is the pain and suffering that I've endured through the financial management side. To me, that has been, you know, what happens? I mean, you're doing your level best to get people things, and you've been so successful for 14 years, and then you just suddenly down. And then you see the true value of people as well, because we know there's 3 ways to judge a person, really, in a way. Is through, Rabbi, you can give the Hebrew on it, but I use the acronym MAD, M-A-D. So when a person's money, how they deal with their money and how they are towards their money. The second thing is anger. You can tell a lot about a person. And the third thing is when a person's drunk. That's how you do it. And money is a very, very interesting thing. I've experienced the most beautiful experiences with people with their money, whether it's up or down or whatever the case is. And then you get the other people that are, but my client base is a wonderful client base that I have. And the agony and all of that is my agony most of the time.
Maybe we'll co-write that book, Art. Maybe we'll co-write that book.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't know why, I feel that even though, there's a lot of people with journeys of going through cancer and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that people couldn't get it out of it, but this financial thing, where everyone is so wanting to make money, and they think it's so simple, and they don't realize at the end of the day, I tell people the whole time, it's from Hashem. I've got, it's an amazing thing. I can buy 10 people, the exact same company on the same day. Why wouldn't they come up with 10 people come up with the same results? Every one of them is different. A guy will call up and say, it's up so nicely, shouldn't we sell? And I said, no, we shouldn't. But then after I finished the call, he's interrupted with the system. I might sell because of that. Or whatever the case. Another guy, I need taxes, I need this or whatever. The results are totally different. And I really do believe that, again, the results that we get at Rosh Hashanah, telling you how much you're going to make or whatever, comes from Hashem.
And that's why my daven, what I daven to Hashem, is that I should merit Hashem's blessing to continue to be a custodian for Hashem's money and allocate it accordingly. Me, my boys, my wife, those people close to me, I would like to sincerely believe that people will say, none of it is ours. We're purely a custodian for Hashem. And if we don't do a good job of that custody, it can go like that. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what the markets do. And that's it. Yeah.
But the custodian, are you talking about the idea of qualifying the person that comes to you for the ask, or are you talking, I give to anyone.
No,
right?
purely for myself. Purely
like,
myself.
Right.
In terms of the quality of people that come to me and their outcomes, I've given up trying to understand why bad people have good lives. I've given up on that. And it's just, I just basically say, firstly, we have no idea what their life really is like. That's firstly.
You don't. The fact that a person comes and knocks,
we don't know what your mind looks for any of that either. So I've given up on trying to understand people. I
like that quote that every single person you come across, and I say every single person you come across, is dealing with a difficulty or with an issue that you know nothing about. And I really do think that's true. So when that person does come to your door, but I do have an inquisitive mind to find out why the person's collecting. To see how they are connected to the story itself. And a recent guy came to me not so long ago, and I said to him, well, what are you collecting for? He said, no, for Panasa. I said, okay, good. So he said, no, I'm going to have surgery. I said, okay, well, how much does the surgery cost? Because you've got to have a goal. If you don't have a goal, you're not going to get the money that you need. He said, no, I'm going to use insurance. I said, but how do you have insurance? He said, no, I've got insurance, so I can get it. So I said, well, why are you collecting money then for the surgery? I thought maybe the deductible or something. No, that's what I do. How long have you been doing this for? 11 years. 11 years for the same procedure that you could get because you got insurance? I said, but what are you doing it? Basically, so I said, why don't you go and get a job? Why don't you go and fundraise for your yeshiva? Why don't you go fundraise for something else? He said, why are you judging me? I said, no, it's not a matter of judging. But if you're holding on to a situation where you know you can get a remedy for your surgery, why are you going out and asking people for money? Doesn't match up. Rather come and say to me, you know what, I just feel like making additional money to what I've got, and I just enjoy asking for money. This is, so what I'm saying is just from a curiosity point of view, I like to ask people why they, what they're asking for and everything else like that. Because there are lots of people that, not a lot, I don't want to say that. it's an unfair statement. But there are some people that come into the community every single year with the same thing, and they don't really have the proper credentials for why they're doing it. I will still give them. But it's a matter of like, if there's people really in need, I want to, like when you said a custodian, I want to find those right people.
But it's because you understand the laws of tzedakah. Maaser, you have an obligation to know that it's going to the right place. That's it, right?
But you can't get into trouble. I was thinking about one thing, what you said, that you can't get into trouble for being a custodian of Hashem's money, let's say the tzedakah money, if, let's say, you hold by, the 10% or 20%, whatever that person wants to give, and you put it into that separate account, you can't really go over, in a way. Were you worried when you said?
No. For me, it's more holistic than that. It's that, that's a lot more. How do you give the tzedakah? How do you conduct yourself? Do you walk around as if you the chochem, and with a little bit of Hashem's partnership, you the allocator? Or do you realize that you're purely a conduit? I'm a kohen. When I give a bracha, whenever I get the opportunity, there's never a moment that I ever think Mike Aron's giving the bracha. No. I'm purely a conduit. And I think it's the same with money. It's how you do it. It's how you conduct yourself with it. If for 1 second you think you're the principal as opposed to the agent, I think that's the problem.
100%. But we always have to remind ourselves of these things.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I so appreciate the time. Ivan, it was
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
Thanks, Rabbi. Lovely to see you all.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.